Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. You know, it's interesting to see weapons used in practice. And what I mean by that is either in warfare, hunting, concealed carry. And I was looking specifically this week a lot, because I'm a precision shooter, at the one that the counter snipers used to take the guy out that tried to shoot Trump. And if you don't know what this is, it's an Accuracy International AXSR rifle. Okay. Now, depending upon which version you get, it is a $11,000 to $15,000 rifle. And it's a Remington long action, Remington 700 long action, on a special chassis that Accuracy International makes. Now, if you don't know what Accuracy International is, it means you're not a precision shooter. These are made to the highest standards for keeping the tightest tolerances possible, to keeping everything in line so that you can make long-range shots accurately. And this makes sense for this particular purpose of what this gun was used for. It was used for counter-snipering, which means to engage snipers at distance. And in this case, it was calibrated and ready to go up to 1,000 yards away. You know, in some of these cases, these guys are more capable than that. Now, if you are familiar with the 300 Winchester round, it's a special forces round nowadays, meaning it's used by special operators, counter-snipers, and snipers in general, in a lot of Western militaries. But it is traditionally a deer, elk, and I say deer lightly because it's not made for deer. It's made for elk, moose, larger game animals. And it is a very, very low trajectory round, meaning that it is like a 308 on steroids. It is a 308 on steroids. It uses the same projectiles, but it's capable of putting a lot more velocity behind the bullet. So you use heavier bullets. The lightest ones I know of using in 300 Win Mag. My dad had some 165 grains that he considered okay for deer, but he downloaded them. But I know 180 is what is kind of the middle of the road. But you can get 300 grain bullets for this, and that's not a stretch to use this type of thing. And there's special projectiles that you can use for armor piercing and all kinds of other things, and the Secret Service would have access to that. So why am I bringing this up? Because a lot of focus has been put on the AR-15, and I don't think I think it does a disservice to our country to focus on the bad guy. And the good guy in this case used a 300 Winchester to take him out. At least that's what the story is right now. Mr. Guns and Gear says it could have been a suppressed AR-15 at closer range. Ballistics do weird things when it hits bodies, but it kind of matches what the pictures that we've been able to find of the aftermath of the shooting, that it's a 300 Win Mag. This makes sense to me, but why I'm so interested in it is because my dad had one, and I'm going to buy one. It's one of those unicorn guns in my collection that has to happen. And it's not just for the hunting. I want it for the precision that I can get out of it. Now, this particular gun is firmly out of my price range. It's a mag-fed, detachable mag-fed 300 Winchester Magnum. Now, I've looked at, they make an AR version of a 300 mag now. And that is also firmly out of my range. The gun I'm looking at is more modestly priced. I'm looking at I think it's called the Bagheera, or Bagheera. It's their new bolt action that I think it comes from Spain. The Military Arms Channel did a piece on one in a 6.5, but I know they make them in 300 black, or 300, I keep saying 300 black because that's the popular wizard round right now, but 300 Winchester is what, Winchester mag is what I'd look at it for. because I would really like to stretch my legs back to 300 yards, or not 300 yards, 1,000 yards consistently. I can do it with my 308. It's not ideal, and there's a lot of error correction you have to do with a 308 round to do it at 1,000 yards. And I think this would take a lot of that out of the math out of that and make me more precise. And that's always what I'm gunning for, is to be as precise of a shooter as I can be. And that's where I'm looking at. Where guns like this come into really being costly is not just the gun itself, it's the optics. Remember, you're looking at a target at 1,000 yards away if you're wanting to do what I'm doing. And you're wanting to be as precise as you can on that target, so you need to be able to see everything you can there. And that type of glass isn't cheap. It's usually about as much as the rifle, if not more than the rifle, times 2. And that's what I'm looking at when I finally get my 300 Winchester Magnum. I have ballistics data from my dad, my uncle. Again, this is kind of like a 270 in my family. In my brother's side, my brothers themselves, they're not big into Magnums. Neither have I ever been. But this is a round that my dad professed, his love for. And he had a 300 Winchester right before he passed, and he sold it, and we never knew who bought it. Otherwise, we would have bought it back before he passed away. And there's that nostalgia factor for me. But it's also because I know the precision capabilities of it. I remember watching my dad cloverleaf at 300 yards, and when I say cloverleaf, put 3 rounds inside of an inch, touching in themselves. And that was impressive to me. And it still is impressive by most shooting standards. My dad was blind in his right eye, so he shot left-handed, even though he's right-handed. It was funny to watch him sometimes bolt his gun. But I think about this. I have the die set from my dad, so yet another reason to buy. I have brass and bullets, load data. I just don't have the gun. I got into a little bit of a tight when I was looking for a job, and I managed to sell off some of his 300 Winchester loaded rounds, and I was actually surprised that people were willing to buy them, especially when they found out they were Dad's. Dad had a reputation of building loads for guns that he owned specifically, that they were either too hot for other people's guns or tuned just right for everyone. And in the 300 Winchester mags, it seems to be what my dad did, because the guy I sold these to, he was just blown away. He's like, these are sheerly, purely accurate. He's like, these don't have a ton of recoil for a 300, but they are extremely tight grouping rounds. So I'm guessing my dad had the same methodology here, is that he was making precise rounds for something like this, and because of the powder charge means that there was more expense to it. So he was a little more about getting precision out of it than trying to get raw performance out of the round. And that's what I'm looking for, is to reclaim that part for my family legacy, I guess, and to show my kids, because they've all become active shooters, and I don't mean in a bad way, I mean shooters in the 2A world, what a Magnum will actually do. They've seen me go to work, so to speak, with 308s. They've seen me go to work with the 270. They see me go to work with an 06. It's time for them to see the legacy that I know my family has with this load data and what we've always done with rifle cartridges, to do it with a Magnum, to show them what it's really made for and be ready to go hunt again. I'm going to do some hikes, and the hikes I'm going to do, I think, are mostly to learn to re-enjoy the outdoors. My dad had a mentality when he took me on hunts, especially with me. There was a lot of work involved and not a lot of an enjoyment, and I think that was more so because of me than my dad. And I want to rediscover that hunting piece that I used to love when I first started hunting. I don't love it anymore. To me, it's always a meat hunt, and it's a hell of a lot more work than what it's worth, because I'm not even a fan of the meat as much as I used to be. So, but my brother is. My brother Ronnie, my brother Rick, they will hunt forever. And I won't let my brother go without having family ever again. So I plan on taking some vacations now that things are settling out now where I can afford to do it. Some bucket list things as far as travel. There's some bucket list items I don't have to, but I want to buy. One of them is that G43 rifle. One of them is a 300 Win mag because of what my dad wanted. The other gun that actually is on my radar is a Mauser Model 99 in a 300 Winchester Magnum. But it's not going to be super precise as what I'm trying to build with the Bergara. Because what it can actually do with it is it has that tune trigger that allows me to get those precise shots off. So that's about all I had for you tonight. I was thinking about what we would talk about, as I always do. Tomorrow, I think I will drop another podcast just to start making this more consistent in my life. Not sure what we'll talk about tomorrow. If you have any ideas, email me at atin082@gmail.com, or you can chat through the Spreaker app to me anytime. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.